Dame and Giannis combined for just under 49 points a game last season. That's the most by any duo in the NBA. The last duo to average more points per game in their first year together, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in their first year together in South Beach. So we thought, it's summer. It's time to take our little front office insider's pulse, right, on what's going on around the league. A little NBA stock marks it. With Bobby Marks. All right, we're going to start in Milwaukee. As we just mentioned, the Bucks have been bouncing the first two rounds the last 2 years. So let's look at their lineup here, Bobby. Are you buying or selling stock in Milwaukee?
I'm putting my 529, my 401k. I am putting everything into Milwaukee right now.
401k is some serious business.
Yeah, that's also
I have a son going to college. Remember that. I like what they've been able to do here. They added Gary Trent Jr. They added Taurean Prince. Their bench got better. DeLon Wright here. We forget about Milwaukee. We talk about Philadelphia. We talk about certainly what New York was able to do. Boston. This is a team that won the third most games the last 2 years. They still have Giannis Antetokounmpo back here. I am buying stock in this Milwaukee Bucks team. A full training camp under Doc Rivers. Right. That should not be discounted.
Wait, because they only had Chris Middleton, Giannis, their full core for 3 games. Lillard for 3 games or 8 games rather. I need another cup of coffee, Chiney. Under Doc Rivers last year. Let's bring Perk back into the conversation. It's year 2, as we mentioned, of this group all together. Are the Bucks a top 3 team out east, Perk?
If you would have asked me this before the Olympics started, I would have told you no. But I have to say yes right now because of what I'm seeing. I got New York and Boston ahead of Milwaukee, but they're sitting at the number 3 spot. The reason that I don't put Philly in there is because Joel Embiid got to show me, right? He got to show me I got to see how he's going to look coming into training camp. Is he going to be in shape? The one thing I don't have to worry about is if Giannis is going to be ready. If Giannis is healthy, which majority of the time he is, then the Bucks are always a contender, and I'm always going to buy stock into the Milwaukee Bucks. I believe Dame getting a training camp under Doc Rivers, him coming into training camp in shape to start the season, them having a training camp together, I'm definitely buying stock into the Milwaukee Bucks.
Look, I'm buying stock too, Perk. Before the show, I was like, but Bobby, you might have sold me a little bit on this, just because if you think about the Bucks, oftentimes we judge teams, especially when they have an aggregation of stars on year 1. The reality is they do better in year 2. Absolutely. So as you mentioned, the training camp, also those small pieces, because the issue has been perimeter. They added some perimeter players. That's what they've been asking for. So the East is better, but so are they. Yeah,
we'll give them a year 2 and kind of assess what we see. But I don't know, you're putting every asset you own, your house, your
I didn't say the house.
Okay. That's the one thing that you're keeping. All right, let's pivot over to the West here. Ja Morant, remember, he only played 9 games last season. He missed his final 47 games of the year after getting season-ending surgery. Now, over the weekend, he gave a status update on his recovery.
I'm really fully to go. It's just building endurance now. So if I had to pick a number, I'd say probably like 75%. And I feel like that's still scary for whoever in front of me. So.
Okay, interesting. Still saying in the 75%. He may not be 100% yet, but remember the last time we saw a healthy Ja Morant lead a Grizzlies team? They were second and scary in the Western Conference. So what are we, buying, selling stock in Memphis, Bobby?
I'm buying stock. I'm not going all in, though. Certainly after last year, missing the playoffs here. But this is the same lineup, and certainly they added Zach Edey in the draft that won 107 games prior to last year in the 2 seasons here. They signed Luke Kennard today to a 1-year, $11 million deal. They get some more shooting off the bench here. But here's your starting lineup. We forget about Ja Morant. Ja Morant, certainly with the injuries and the suspension last year. And then you have Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year. You have those bookends. It's rarely where a team that misses the lottery that we can say can compete for a top 6 seed in the Western Conference here. And I think Memphis can do that.
Yeah, this is pretty unprecedented, Chiney, when we've talked about teams that they've come back with these same players after missing the playoffs. But I guess I'll turn to you, Perk. The Grizzlies are in a 5-way tie. The Clippers, the Warriors, the Heat, the Kings in terms of title odds. Do they belong in that cluster tied for 11th? Do you think they're a tier above?
No, I think they belong in it, but I want to talk about Ja Morant for a second because he said it's going to be a problem for anyone that's going to be in front of him. Well, guess who's in front of him? Anthony Edwards, a guy that went set right in his seat. And so we know Anthony Edwards is not trying to give up his seat, and especially when we talk about guys that are on the verge of being the face of the league, especially when LeBron and Steph and KD, they get out the way. And so if I'm John Morant, I'm looking at John Morant and I'm saying, okay, are you coming back to claim what's yours? Not just on the floor, because we know what he's capable of doing on the floor, but off the floor as well. And I want to see a jump in far as growth in his leadership, right? I mean, he's now considered a veteran, a young veteran. Like, are you going to grow, be able to lead this team to back where they were? Because, just a year or two ago, or 2 years ago, they were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now they have to go dethrone young groups like OKC and Minnesota Timberwolves. So I'm looking at Ja to go get his seat back from Anthony Edwards.
I'm right there with you, Perk. You mentioned, Anthony Edwards right in front of him. You know who also is going to be in front of him trying to do his thing? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, as you mentioned, with OKC, and also the guy that was in the NBA Finals, Luka Doncic. So the West is stacked.
Yeah.
But I do believe this year, or the extended time in which we haven't really got to see John Morant, he's going to learn from it. And I do like, might be a little bit sneaky, but the energy that Memphis had around Summer League, Zach Edey, you can feel like they're trying to reclaim what they had, but also put a new, I guess you can say 2.0 on it.
Yeah.
The maturation will come because, obviously he had a situation on a grand stage that could have affected the trajectory of his entire career, but instead now he's back, 75%. I'm excited to see what he does on the floor. He knows the eyeballs are going to be on him.
Yep.
The situation is looking better from a roster standpoint. So I kind of like, I'm putting my money in there. Not my house, but just a little bit of money.
Just a little bit of money. This is a team that has a chip on their shoulder. When
Yep.
you look at John Morant and what he's coming back and trying to prove, when you see the discussion around Zach Edey leading into the draft, is he even an NBA player?
Yep.
Is he going to be able to be an effective NBA player after what we saw him do in college? Because it's just a little bit of a different game. Marcus Smart, he's coming back and trying to say, hey, let me show you what I got.
After watching his guys win a championship in Boston.
Mr. Zion Williamson. He is Chiney in Paris. Not to participate with Team USA, but to do some promotional stuff around the Jordan brand. You can see him there with all the fans. We haven't seen Zion on the floor since he was dropping, 40 and 11 on the Lakers before exiting the playing game early, unfortunately, with that hamstring injury. So, Bobby, he's got the new all-star running mate in DeJounte Murray. Are we buying? Are we selling? Are we putting in the 401k? How are we feeling?
I'm holding, but I have my finger on the sell button. And here's why. And I like the DeJounte Murray trade, and I understand why they did it as far as kind of get another guard with C.J. McCollum here. Here's my questions. You've got Brandon Ingram going into the last year of his contract. What happens with Brandon Ingram? Does that become a distraction when we get to training camp if there is no extension in place? You look at their lineup right now, Malika, what's missing? Size.
Yeah.
Right now, we have Zion Williamson playing at the 5. They signed Daniel Tice down here on the bottom here. So you can certainly put him in there and interchangeable there. They have Trey Murphy off the bench here. But that's my biggest question. A team that lacks size. They lost Jonas Valanciunas here. I think they can compete for a top 6 seed, but I think there's some distractions potentially there that could derail this team.
What do you think? How far can a Zion-led team go this season?
Look, Zion showed me exactly what I needed to see, because we asked for big performances when it mattered most, and we got that. That step was made. He also played more games than we all foresaw based off of what we had seen before. So he's moving in the right direction. But when I look at this roster that Bobby brought up, I see a lot of players that I like. Not only Zion, DeJounte is one of those guys that we felt like was a boost to a squad. I love Trey Murphy III.
We know. You are the head of the Trey Murphy III.
When he came back, he provided a boost. They made a push late on. They've got the veteran presence of C.J. McCollum. And if the question is, will it be a distraction? B.I., Brandon Ingram in his situation. This guy's like, he's dealt with all the bright lights. He's trying to sort of still figure himself out. I don't worry about him being a distraction. I think the bigger question was, how would Zion handle the early years in his career? And I think that's been answered. They have talent. They need a little bit more depth, but I still like the Pels.
It kind of feels like this is the summer, though, right? This is the summer we want to see Zion Williamson come back and Perk be that player that we saw not in the in-season tournament at that final game, but the one that we saw, as Chiney mentioned, in that play-in game. What do you think? Is Brandon Ingram the right co-star for Williamson? DeJounte Murray, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I'll tell you what, I actually like Zion at the 5 position. I think that helps the New Orleans Pelicans, right, in his spacing. Zion needs space in order to operate. And if you're asking me, can Zion be a Draymond Green defensively? I believe he can. If you're asking me defensively, can Zion be a top 5 shot blocker in the league with that athleticism? I believe that he can. Offensively, we know that what he can do. Can he elevate his rebounding some more? Absolutely. I believe that he will. But when you talk about Herb Jones, when you talk about Trey Murphy, Brandon Ingram, DeJounte Murray, that's a lot of size and athleticism defensively around the perimeter, and that's what you need in a tough Western Conference, especially when you got to go against the likes of Anthony Edwards, Luka, Jamal Murray, LeBron James, the list goes on. So I actually like it with Zion playing the 5, and I believe they could go to the Western Conference Finals.
Oh, the Western Conference Finals. It's just those couple of matchups against really talented bigs where you're wanting a healthy Zion Williamson that you're going to have to keep an eye on.
Well, here's another question here. What happens when you go against the size of Dallas, when you go against the size of certainly Minnesota here, certainly Anthony Davis here? I like the interchangeable matchups here, but as far as you see, 6'6".
Yeah.
That's the size as far as where New Orleans is here, and that's something to certainly keep an eye on.
Yeah, and one thing that we learned in the NBA, I guess you can say the Western Conference Finals, was that alley-oop play from Luka to the bigs, like you mentioned, to LeBron, to AD. That is something that Zion will need more help to contend with.
And really, winning a playoff series, that is what we want to see. That's what we're going to start to define as success for